To start with session 4, Marshall talked about how when he was younger he saw Bridgman's artworks as scruffy at some point, but now he sees his mastery in adulthood. And so there's that recognition of mastery as you develop your eye for art, and it comes with practice, but also it comes with, like seeing more references to mastery and seeing the work and the intention behind every line. And that's why it's important to kind of like be involved in reading works from old masters. My issue with it is that like actual copies are really expensive. So that's one thing. But moving on. Here we have like a really valuable lesson here with how to translate something in its side profile to a foreshortened version. And so you essentially put horizontal lines as markings for every point of the figure, and then you use that as a reference for turning the figure into a different angle. And essentially, like the height of this thigh is still going to be the same height here, and even when it's front facing, and also the height of the knee, it's going to be the same. And until you get all of the parts that are foreshortened, it's a bit difficult, but you can train your eye to do it, and it's actually pretty fulfilling when you try it. I tried doing this on a full figure, and it was difficult going from back to front, like a figure turned sideways and then a figure turned back and then a figure turning forward. So this is useful for like turnarounds, which is something that I struggled with a lot in drawing like original characters because I couldn't make them turn around. They would change every time I tried to redraw them. So moving past that one, we have here a animation concept, pitch, yaw, and roll. So pitch, yaw, and roll, I'm not sure which field specifically owns it because I saw an orthodontics video, I saw a video from aviation, but regardless of it, let's get into it. So pitch is the rotation where the angle doesn't change, it goes up and down. Similar to how when you nod your head up and down, it stays upright. That's pitch. For yaw, yaw is the rotation where it moves from left to right, but still staying upright. So, say you move your head from the left to the right, and then that's yaw. If an owl turns its head completely around, that's also yaw. So it doesn't change its angle, it doesn't go upside down, it just stays upright. So for roll, this is when the angle changes. The object goes from left to right, or it goes along the vertical axis. It completely changes its angle from left to right and flips over essentially. It flips completely, shows its underside, shows its upper side again. So that's roll. So here we have how an imbalanced figure is in motion. So when viewing some figures that are drawn with a very high amount of energy, like say you're drawing someone that's running, you don't draw them with both of their feet planted on the ground stable. You draw them with movement, so you draw them imbalanced because one of their legs is up in the air and turned and moving in a certain direction, while their arms are also moving with high energy in relation to where they're heading. So, in this example that Marshall quickly drew in the video, is that he drew someone standing up. So, this is a very stable person. But then in the other one, you have someone here who's a bit imbalanced. They have their leg jutting out, and the figure also has like their arm in the opposite direction. So, now this one is going to be about empathizing with the figure. So he said, in moving the leg, you might subconsciously move the arm opposite just to stay balanced. So the arm goes that way, the leg goes that way. And so he thought about how the figure might want to do this just to stay upright and not fall. So that's another concept of, you have to like imagine possibly what the figure might desire to do because of discomfort, because of preference, of habit. Is it because they feel like they're gonna be falling? Is it because there's tension in their limb if they stay in a certain position for too long? Like, if you keep your leg afloat, that's like a little exercise, honestly. Without like it's like you're training your freaking core and your leg. I don't know, I don't exercise too much, but yeah, that's something to learn. And it helps a lot with like drawing figures to actually do the pose in real life, to emulate it, even if you look like a freak. At least you're a freak that's drawing figures well. So that's a win in my book. So moving on here, ignore this one. That's like, you know, just my note. So not yet the assignment though. So here we have the body's experience. It experiences physical forces such as gravity, pressure, squash and stretch, which we've already tackled before, and motion. And under motion is a really important concept of drag and follow through. So again, these are like animation concepts, Marshall said. And drag is when you have something attached to you and then it's dragging behind, or it's in a delayed movement following the direction that you're going. And so like a superhero that's flying forward will have their cape flowing backwards or earrings flowing backwards, essentially like things that are extended. But also it's sometimes used as like I know, a way to exaggerate cartoony animation. So like you're drawing an ostrich, or actually Roadrunner, for example, like a long neck, and then you have his neck dragging backwards when he's running, but then when he stops, his leg snaps like juts forward before being elastic and going back to normal. So the part where he stops and then his leg juts forward, that's follow through. So drag is the delay and follow through is when it continues moving even when the main body has stopped, and then it stops after a delay. So that's drag and follow through. And emulating these things when you're drawing adds a lot of character. So drawing beads of sweat in a direction is going to be adding some life to the drawing or the figure that you are showing. So that's super important. Gesturally, it adds a lot of character. And you can also see these things in Western comics, speed lines, for example, there's a lot of speed lines in actions like punches. There's a lot of lines that indicate force and wind. So moving on, there's also one last force, which is something I never thought about before in drawing figures, and it adds to the emotion in the empathetic aspect of it. So it's emotional forces. You think about what the figure is feeling in that moment emotionally, and it can help because maybe you're drawing a character who is insecure, who has hunched shoulders, who has a very prominent frown every time, who has very tense expressions in his limbs, who may be a bit awkward, who has a very closed off way of standing, or they're very open and vocal and they have a very open gesture. And so these things all add to the life of the drawing because it makes the character believable. So I never actually thought of these things. Like, so empathizing with the figure you're drawing, that thing adds life to the drawing itself. It's crazy to me how like making a figure more believable also involves actually crafting life in your head and not just referencing them. So Marshall even said, like, if you're going to be not feeling what the figure feels when you're drawing them, then the figure you're drawing is just a map or a plan and not a gesture. And so now we're moving on to the actual assignment, and this is in reference to Nicolaides. So Marshall said that in the assignment, you're going to be making gesture drawings. You're going to choose a pose that you like, you're going to strike the pose in real life, and then you're going to describe your pose to someone that's not there and have them try to strike the same pose. Also, you're going to have someone take pictures of each and see how badly you described it with words. So the thing that I'm going to be personally doing is I'm going to be striking the pose, and I'm going to judge how poorly it is compared to the actual reference image. And I'm going to note the things that I didn't feel or didn't consider doing in terms of like maybe an angle of the limb, an angle of the hand, turning the head. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to show you guys because that's embarrassing, but yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. Gonna try to do maybe 10 of these or 5 depending on my stamina for posing. So that's about it. We have to also gotta focus on like even if it looks super abstract and full of squiggles, that's fine. This is a gesture practice, and gesture is about free flowing movements and just showing flow. Don't focus on edges like previous session assignments. That's something that we have to avoid here. Gotta free flow and let our brain shut off and just do gesture. So that's about it. Thanks for listening, guys. You guys have no idea how many times I tried to retake this just to get a good, quiet, environment. There's a lot of dogs here in this neighborhood, I swear. So that's about it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And bye bye now.